I'm Shafiq Abdussabur, and today is Wednesday, September the 29th. And this is Urban Talk Radio 103.5 FM, where you will hear conversation, information, education, inspiration, and motivation from the American urban perspective. Today on Urban Talk Radio, we have our guest, Dr. Rebecca Cohen, and also Ms. Patricia Kelly. She's with the Ebony Horse Women. I also have my co-host, main man, the dude that makes this thing run, Kingsley, Ossei, my co-host. So we're going to get right into it today. Today is going to be a pretty serious show, and a show that I think that a lot of people have been waiting for, and a show that I believe that's very important as we're trying to tackle a lot of things. Oh, y'all see my cowboy hat? You can't see it because you're listening. I got on one of the freshest Stetsons in the state of Connecticut, and it's original. So don't try to come steal it because I
have nothing to do with the Dallas Cowboys, right?
Yeah, it don't have nothing to do with Dallas Cowboys. I don't play that. But recently, we wanted to bring this show because we have an event that's going to be happening, and we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the work that these two experts are doing in the field around trauma and trauma prevention and trauma curing. And this runs right in with a lot of what both me and Kingsley both do, because he is the executive director of Connecticut Against Violence, and he's been working in this area for a very long time. So I know he's excited to embrace this. So yesterday, FBI released a crime report. I believe it was for the state of Connecticut, particularly. They talked about violent crimes being up in Connecticut. They said homicides and shootings were up 30%. But violent crime was down. And what was really interesting is it's this thing that's happening in America where when people don't have an answer as to why Black, Hispanic, and Latino people, particularly the men, are continuing to get killed at these fast-paced rates or these very high rates compared to other cultures, white people, Asians, Indians, etc., that they try to appear to normalize it and say, oh, well, overall, violent crime is low. It's just that the shootings are high and we just don't understand it. Well, maybe like COVID uncovered a lot of issues in the African American Hispanic community. Violent crime, and particularly gun crime, continues to also tell that same story, even though some of the experts want to then try to tether COVID onto gun violence by saying, well, gun violence is high because it's COVID. And we can use a lot of different arguments to fight that. One I would use is, well, if gun violence went up in the African American, Hispanic, Latino community during COVID, and if African American, Hispanic people died mostly during COVID, are we saying that people of color can't handle a pandemic? So there's a whole bunch of stuff that can be thrown around with this concept. But one thing is for sure, gun violence is up in Hartford, skyrocketing. 28 homicides, I believe, 28 as of a night ago. A young teenage boy was shot to death at a vigil that he went to pay homage to his friend that had got shot and killed. In New Haven, we're at 22 homicides, up 18 months, 110% over 18 months, 110%. So we got to find a cure to this thing. We got to find a solution. There's been a lot of conversations. There's a lot of people having conversations, but today we're going to have a conversation about something we're doing here and bringing to you, to New Haven, that these two experts are bringing to you. So if you're just tuning in today on Urban Talk Radio, you can join this conversation live by logging on to newhavenindependent.org. Or if you're listening, you're probably listening at 103.5 FM. Or Kingsley, how can they hit it on the social media? What are they doing?
I'm live on my Facebook page at Kingsley, last name Ossei, and it's also part of my.
Awesome. And we'll be watching and we'll be trailing that. So, I like this hat. I'm sorry. I'm going to look at it for. All right, Miss Kelly, we're going to start with you. I remember when I was in law enforcement and we was trying to do the Freddie Fix parade. Black cops hadn't marched in the parade in like 10 years. So some of us got together and got the officers to march, and we wanted to come on them horses, be a bunch of black cops on the horses. So I didn't know no. And that's when I first came in contact with you through then virtually. It wasn't really social media then, so that tells you how far ago that was. But very impressed. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've come across a documentary of that was a really nice documentary that's done about what you do. So why don't you tell us who you are, tell us what you do, and then we'll go to you, Dr. Cohen, and then we'll talk about this project.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on this morning. It is a very important topic that we're talking about. My name is Patricia Kelly. I'm the founder, president, and CEO of the Ebony Horsewomen. And yes, you're right. We started riding in the Freddie Fix-It Parade, I believe it was 1984 under Ed Grant when he was leading it. And we rode all the way through, I think, until, I don't know, maybe the late 2014, 15, 16, one of those, I don't know, time is running. We run an equestrian and therapeutic center in Hartford, Connecticut. We have a number of different programs. Our focus, however, is equine-assisted psychotherapy. However, we have public riding lessons that we give, trainings for mental health professionals in the area of equine-assisted psychotherapy and therapy, youth programs, a variety of community events around horses. So we've been in this business now for 38 years, and we're the only urban equestrian center of our kind in America. We have African American and Latino young men as park rangers for Keeney Park. Keeney Park is 693 acres. That's a lot of land to cover. And the best way to cover this is by horseback. So we have these young African American and Latino men who patrol this vast park as well. So in essence, what we do is provide services that are equine and agricultural based here in Hartford.
I'm stuck on the patrols right now. I'm like, I want to do that. My hand is up. I'm like, I want to, but that is something that we'll have to talk about certainly after we get past October. I like that idea. Let me just ask you this: where in the world do you keep horses in Hartford? I'm just gonna keep it real. I've been to Hartford.
You have to know, Hartford is an agricultural town. You can keep horses in your backyard.
What?
Yes, sir.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
I did. I own a house that I have owned for 48 years in the heart of the hood. I turned my garage into stalls and kept horses there for years.
So you have horses?
I could not keep the manure there. So I would bring it to Keeney Park and spread it across acreage. But you can keep horses, goats, cows, pigs, whatever. It's
in Hartford?
A city, I should say.
I'm hurt right now.
Why you want?
Because I got 6 chickens and a few visiting, and I'm like, I can only have 6. I'm like, okay, the others are visiting. We got in New Haven, we got stray cats, dogs off the leash.
Livestock. You can keep livestock.
And feral squirrels. You don't need a permit for those.
No.
They go in your and raccoons that can open your trash can. I had a raccoon stick in my back door the other night. I was like, yeah.
They got thumbs. They can open up anything.
Yeah, I was like, boy, you trespassing. All right, so Dr. Cohen, tell us about what you do, because it appears that you're involved in some similar type of action on this side of the state? Talk to us.
Sure. Well, good morning, and thanks so much for having us on today. And it, for me, is always an honor to be working with Ms. Kelly and to be on a show with her. I am a clinical psychologist, born and raised here in New Haven, and I live here now with my son. So familiar with the things that you are talking about. I went to public school here, and also
What school you go to? What school did you go to?
I went to West Hills and I went to HSC. So did all my siblings. And so, you know, one of the ways that I frame it is that I do recognize that, particularly having white skin and some economic privilege, I've had some things and protections that have buffered me from some of the violence that happens in the city, but I also had exposure to it growing up, and I still do because of where I live and things like that. And so I pay attention in terms of my training and in terms of how I relate with folks in my community, because it's alive and happening, unfortunately, as we speak, as is the resilience around it. And so I'm really thrilled to be getting into this community work with all of you. The intention of what we're doing is to build more community, I think, interest around an alternative trauma treatment model. I have been fortunate to work in community mental health settings for a really long time now, doing mostly talk therapy, being trained in a number of different trauma treatment models. And also because of my experience growing up here and riding in the city, because we had horses here in New Haven too, until only a few years ago, although only in one place. And that was the Yale Polo and Equestrian Center. And now we don't. And so, you know, really looking at how can we revive that kind of access when we have a treasure like Ebony Horsewomen here in the state. New Haven would not need to recreate the wheel, because Ms. Kelly has been willing to, you know, enter these conversations with us about, you know, is it possible to create access to a culturally invested, not just culturally competent, but a culturally invested program of equine assisted therapy with other potentially comprehensive types of riding and horse care and management here for the city. So again, since I was a teenager, this has been something that I've been interested in doing because again, in my experience, I saw that there was disparate access to the horses that we had in the city across racial lines. And so is there a way to revive this in a more equitable way? I think that's a part of what, you know, a big part of what brings us all together is that we have that common interest.
You know, what's really interesting is that I grew up in New Haven. And I say my age just so people can have a reference point, because, you know, if you talk to some young people right now, they'll tell you that 1990 is back in the day. You know what I mean? They're like, remember back in the day in 1990? I'm like, boy, 1990, I was 20-something years old. But I'm 54, and I grew up in New Haven my whole life. And my earliest experience with horses, so this will be a question that will be coming up, is that my earliest experience was with horses. My very first early experience with horses was my mother was in the Black Panther. She was a teenager around that time. And we were on the green, and we were surrounded by horses, with police on horses, with police officers, National Guards people, and the horses were used to breach the green to pretty much stampede people off of the green. My second earliest memory with horses in New Haven was going to the parades downtown, and the police officers used the horses to come close to the curb to intimidate you back onto the curb. And then as I fast forwarded into my adult life around the 90s, for those of you who think the 90s is back in the day, and I came back to New Haven and I was an I started getting to like what they call now being an advocate. Horses were being introduced into the Black and Hispanic Latino communities as part of community policing, and the horses with the officers were on were at the substations, and they would interact with the children in just a very basic way. My question is, how do you, when you both are doing your programs, are you keeping things like that in mind, like the history of how horses have been used in the African American, Hispanic community, or maybe the people's different experiences, or do you just go with, like, hey, I have this format that I'm using, and I'll just overcome it by I don't know. Do you take that in mind?
Let me see if I can address that. So,
is that relevant though? What I'm saying, is that irrelevant? Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
I mean, anything is relevant. So let's unpack it and put it in its proper place. Okay. So number one, African Americans and Latinos have always been involved in a less obtrusive way. Always, always, always. Professionally, recreationally, whatever. It is a myth that Black people got tacked on to the horse industry. We were in it from the beginning. First of all, America would not have had horses on its plains without the Spanish. Let's start there. Spanish people brought horses to America, to the place that we have now, utilizing them. Black people have been involved with horses from the beginning. The first 13 winning jockeys of the Kentucky Derby were Black men, and they dominated that field until the Kentucky Derbies needed to or wanted to license jockeys, and they refused to license Black men. And many of those Black men went to Russia and rode and won. So we can follow our history all the way back when horses first began. The term cowboy is that way. It's termed cowboy because of Black men herding cattle. They were not called cattlemen or cattle hands. They were called cow boys. And it was that way until Hollywood started using it, and it became this famous icon. And they threw the history of the Black cowboy, which was 1 in 3 in the West, out the door. So we now think that, Black people are Johnny-come-latelys to the horse industry. We are not. So let's lay that foundation. Religion, and you can imagine any other entity, has been used to control people. Okay? So I'm not surprised that horses, because of their size, have been used to try to control people. So we don't focus in on that, because the true beauty of a horse is not its size, its ability to understand what's happening to us as individuals. So that's what we lean in on. We understand horse psychology, we understand horse behavior, and we use that as a diagnostic tool to get through some of the toughest traumas that we have seen. And when we know that these traumas are so deep that the individuals are no longer able to get to the root of them, or cannot find the words to articulate that kind of trauma, or even understand it, that horse has the ability to diagnostically give us information about that client that will help in the healing process. So that's where we begin. We don't need to look at, a negative aspect of horses and how it's been used in the past. We look at the positive aspects of horses and how it could be used currently to help heal people, particularly BIPOC people.
Ms. Kelly, that was amazing. Like I'm sitting here, I got chills. I'm like, that's better than the BBC. Seriously. We're gonna take that. We're gonna clip that, and we're clipping that and owning that and be like, let me tell you about horses and Black people. Yeah. If you just joined us today on Urban Talk Radio, I'm Shafiq Abdussabur, and I have my co-host on, Kingsley Ossei. We are talking about horses and trauma and gun violence and equestrian therapy, and we have with us Patricia Kelly, who is the CEO of Ebony Horsewomen. We also have with us Dr. Rebecca Cohen. She is a clinical psychologist. I get it right? Okay, because I don't want to be looking at paperwork. I don't do that. Y'all know I don't do
Got it
speeches
right.
from paper either. And this is like a serious topic. So if you're just listening now, you just joined us on this show, you can go back and catch this on the podcast. But this is like very important stuff. Harry, can we go to our clip? Can we go to our clip now?
Kids that used to bully each other, pick on each other, they built a brotherhood outside of here. These kids, they have a positive circle to turn to during tough times and during times where they might slip up.
In schools, we have gotten reports that this student that was off the wall is now calming down. You know, they're focusing more. And they're like, well, what are you guys doing? Nothing. We're giving them the time, the attention, the space that they need to better themselves so that they will be better when they approach the world.
It's not a program, it's a herd. And I'm the alpha mare. We're here to make sure that we get you to your best life. We've seen kids grow up, go off to college because of Miss Kelly's work in terms of connecting them to schools.
It's amazing to see how far some of them have gone. From that rough kid that was always in trouble to now having their own business, becoming veterinarians or nurses. It almost makes me want to cry because it's amazing to see.
We have a lot of our alumni come back to say, I did it, and you can too.
One of our alumni students is Frederick Wright.
Fred graduated from Cornell University's farrieing program. He started to now shoe and trim our horses.
There are generations of youth that Mrs. Kelly has brought through these doors. She's changing the lives of the people in Hartford as a whole.
Aliana's been here since she was like 8. So it's been over 10 years. These horses mean the world to my daughter. She participates in the therapeutic part of it. My daughter has very emotional needs, so I think it helps her a lot. I'm a single mom of 3, and having this whole team that's here as her second family is extremely helpful. Being able to walk into a location like this with people who are highly skilled, have degrees, knowledge, not only about horses, but about children is really a lifeline.
I'm retired and raising my 2 grandkids. They don't have a female at home on a regular basis, so being around Miss Kelly and Dominique teaches them how to be a young lady. They really go out of their way to make sure that these kids are well taken care of, have a lot to do, and keep them occupied. My grandkids, they've been here for about 6 years now, and they've grown a lot. They matured a lot here. Once they learn how to master riding a horse, I think it helps them with their confidence. I also help them with teamwork because they have to get together as a team and make sure that all the horses are taken care of.
A lot of people think that when you have a horse, it's just about throwing a saddle on them and riding. No, it's not. It's seeing how...
They're like, well, I guess I could do it. A radio show. We can clap. That's exciting. I'm gonna tell you. I wish when I was growing up, I had that. I didn't have that. But we're gonna try to do the best we can to bring that to the young people here in New Haven and try to establish something.
Shafiq, I want to tell you that when you see those black boys on those horses, for many of those young men, they don't have fathers in the home. Those horses become the fathers. They teach. Wow. Those horses teach. They're no nonsense. They're straightforward. They're non-judgmental, and they have taught those young men how to be men. Very much.
Kingsley, man, get in this conversation, man, because you work and been working with youth for as long as I have around this gun violence. What are your thoughts around this?
Well, I'm muted.
No.
I'm learning about this whole horse tactic because you know, we've had Jesus my friend Jesus he did a gun violence video, Wyclef, April Showers. He's actually currently shooting a film. He's all about the social impact content. Actually building a $5 million school in Yonkers right now. He's currently shooting a film called Suicide Saints. If I can do this shameless plug. So this is Suicide Saints for all our if you are listening to us live on the radio, let me go down it real quick. Vincent Cross and Thomas Meadow are juxtaposed souls having extremely different but very similar experiences, torn apart from their realities and conflicted by their mental illness. Cross battles inner demons from a history of trauma, while Meadow struggles to find himself as he attempts to keep his head above water. We follow their path to understand which becomes their fate, suicide or saint. Suicide Saint is a powerful and inspirational film poised to address the tragic presence of mental illness in our families and communities. There is reason to be hopeful. Prevention works. Treatment is effective. People recovers. So, like I said, there are many, few different tactics. A lot of time, we do a lot of films as to how easy it is to make money based on people's interests, and I applaud him for this. But I am learning from Patricia about this whole horse tactic.
Yeah, I can tell you, man, it was new to me. So I became aware of it probably early on in the year when I was contacted by Dr. Cohen, and she wanted to meet, and I was like, okay, I'm running for alder, got a new voter, and she was like, no, I want to talk about some horses. I was like, what, bro? Talk about some horses? What are you talking about horses in New Haven, man? I can't even get horses for cops. What you want? And so she was like, I want to talk to you about this project. And so she laid it out in such a way that was very clear. I didn't really understand all of it, but it was laid out in such a way where it was so clear I could follow like rules. It's kind of like you may not ever build a house, but just follow the map and you can build it. So after, I don't know, it's probably been a while now, about 6 months of just conversating and going back and having different discussions around it, I was better able to understand what it's about and, what's going on. And to be honest with you, we don't always have to understand something to support it or fully embrace it. That's why there's experts. There's experts that deal with things because that's what they do. I don't understand how to take out your appendix, but I understand that your appendix need to be removed, and the doctor is going to make that determination. And so, what we have today on Urban Talk Radio technically is 2 official doctors that can heal, or healers, whatever the terms, the pache terms that people want to use to bring this about. That's what we have. And that's, it's going to take that. We need advocacy. We need people that's out there being lobbyists. We need policymakers. We need the workers on the ground. But we also need the experts, and they need to be supported. And I'm going to twist this show before we twist it back and say, there's like this kind of like dangerous conversation that's happening around gun violence. I hear people say, all Black people getting killed. Where's Black Lives Matter on this, that, now? Why is Black Lives Matter not doing this? And why Black Lives Matter is an advocacy lobbyist movement that is about police reform, not about gun violence and gun violence prevention, not about how many Black people, babies died because of the mortality rate. It's one specific thing. So we don't go to Mothers Against Drunk Driving and ask them what are they doing about gun violence, because that's not what they do. And so we need to be careful that as we're searching for solutions around this issue of Black and brown violence for gun violence, let's just keep it very conversation very specific to the issue, right? And so that's why we work and lean on to experts like this, because this is what you all do. So, Rebecca, I'll start with you, Dr. Combs. Let's talk about what you come and bring into New Haven, what you bring into New Haven, what you got for what you're Uber eating for the community around gun violence prevention here. What you got?
Well, I guess I'd first want to name that anything that we're thinking about doing, talking about doing, will come in context with a lot of really hard work that is already happening on the ground here in New Haven from grassroots organizations. And just to kind of plug, not to contradict you, but to plug that I know that like local Black Lives Matter does a lot of mutual aid and things like that for the community here. And so I wouldn't want to overstep that in talking about what we want to do. As well as the community health providers that I know go door to door and are doing a tremendous amount of work in this line. And so what we want to talk about is where we could fit in with equine assisted therapy to the tremendous efforts that are being made by people working really hard on this already. And I think that this is a vision that's come together and it is transforming with us as we talk to more people as to what makes the most sense. Right now, and what's come from our meeting specifically with you, Shafiq, is and Ms. Kelly, is this idea of having a few demonstrations where Ms. Kelly will bring her people and her horses down to a park here in New Haven, I think about 4 times over the next year, to start to introduce this idea and talk about it and build awareness and education around how equine assisted therapy works and the power of horses to participate in our healing. And specifically in trauma treatment on so many different levels. In terms of, like Ms. Kelly talks about them being a biofeedback machine, this way that they are going to respond to us. Doesn't really matter what we're saying based on what is happening to us inside. And that is why it's important to have professionals there around with it who are interpreting the horse's behavior and what's going on, and giving kids space also to have their own conversations with the horses. And Ms. Kelly, I think, really gives some good examples about how that works and the ways that sometimes kids can say things to a horse that are much harder to say to another person the first go around when they're trying to talk about something that happened to them. So that's a little piece of it. And I think the larger vision is to say, is there land, is there space here in New Haven that could house a facility to have equine assisted therapy? So
we can bring some horses. So we need horses
in a permanent way.
Bring the horses back.
Right, because we have had it here. I found out, I didn't know this, but my great grandfather on my father's side had a horse on Vernon Street way back in the day. He was the first generation on that side of the family that immigrated here. And he had a cart and sold things, with his horse. We, similar to Hartford, we've got laws, I think, prohibiting it at this point. So that'd be something else we gotta work on. But that you can see that there are carriage houses all throughout Fairhaven, throughout the different neighborhoods, to see that there is a history of horses here that has shifted over the years until, again, very recently when they've all been gone. And so, there's a number of things for us to look at in terms of making that viable, but they're all things that can be worked on when we have the right people coming into play.
So the goal is, all right, so let's talk about this event. So we're talking about there's an event that's going to happen, this event on the 10th of October, correct?
Yes.
10th of October, what time?
11 o'clock, Gulf Street Park. Field.
Horses are coming. Hear me, hear ye, hear ye. All New Haveners and New Haven County people. Horses are coming to New Haven October the 10th at 11 o'clock. They'll be here from 11 to 3. The horses will be. Okay. Now, so people gonna ride horses? Like, so when the horses are here in the Gulf Street Park, what should people expect? Is it gonna be a rodeo? Are they gonna be riding horses? What are they gonna be? Is it gonna be cowboys here, cowgirls, cow people? What's going on, Miss Kelly? What is this actually going to be? What should people expect when they show up? Is it free? Do they have to pay money? Can they bring a corn to feed the horses? What's going on?
So unfortunately, at this time, we're not going to be riding the horses, but we will be bringing our cowboys, our cowgirls, our horses here. And the emphasis is to talk to, I think, two demographics. One would be the New Haven clinician. We'd like to get them familiar with how equine-assisted psychotherapy works and how it could work in their practice, and how powerful it is to reach probably some of their clientele that has been a little unreachable. You know, trauma is different for everyone. And there are cases where talk therapy just cannot get through. So you need to use some other kind of modality. And using a prey animal like a horse is one of the best ways that I know how to break through some of those trauma lines to get to the root of the issue and to help people heal. So on the 10th, we will bring, our horses. We'll bring enough of our own clinicians in, and horse specialists and trauma specialists in, to talk with New Haven's mental health professionals. Hopefully that we could get them to come out and listen to how equine-assisted psychotherapy works. And of course, we have our young people who will be here as well that can interact with the youth of New Haven to show them how pleasurable and how important it is to kind of work around horses. And how do you work around horses, and why are they so special, and how do you walk them, and how do you brush them, and how do you interact with them? So our kids will be here to as well introduce New Haven kids to horses from a different perspective that you spoke of earlier.
That sounds exciting. So hopefully people will come out. So we're looking for therapists to come out. This is your shot. Don't wait for the RFP or RFQ. Get out here, and this is your shot, man, to get out here and learn this work. This is a great opportunity for parents who have young people that want to get out on a nice Sunday. Hopefully the weather will be good, and you can bring your nephew, your niece, your little brother, whoever, come out and interact with these horses. And fathers, one thing I've seen a lot in New Haven, I'm sure people may have seen it around, I have never seen in such an era the amount of Black fathers I see accompanying their children, walking around, pushing strollers, carry-on shoulders, holding hands, and walking. I mean, this is an amazing, wonderful thing that's happening around in a lot of our centers, and it's that kind of thing that we don't see. My wife always gets on me and she goes, "Stop watching YouTube," because I watch YouTube all the time. That's where I get all my news from, because I like to catch stuff raw, and I'll search raw video to whatever the news incident is. But what winds up happening, because of the way you watch your news, if you watch the news about Chicago shooting, they'll show you all of the constant shootings in Chicago, Dallas, and all these. So my YouTube is crazy when you go look at suggested next. And so my point is, same thing is happening on Facebook. If you're on Facebook and you're watching, street fights and all this other stuff, you're just going to continue to be bombarded with a series of negative impacted behavior. And so this is a good opportunity firsthand to see good energy and good things happening for our community, right? For our community. And these two experts have worked on this for a while. I've been kind of like a sidekick on the wall just to, give my 2 cents literally. But this event's going to take place on October the 10th, 11 o'clock to 3. It'll be at Gulf Street Park. It's for free, okay? We've been working on trying to get permits for food, but it's COVID, and so it's just crazy. The process is just crazy, so there won't be food. You can't feed the horses. Don't bring horse treats. Don't go out and get all rambunctious and go to Petco and try to buy horse treats and have a pocket full of corn, or don't try to bring your dog biscuits or even some grandma's cornbread. Horses, they don't operate like that, okay? They got their own system, but this would be a good thing. It'd be a good family event. It'll hopefully be something that will be continuous. As Dr. Cohen said, we're looking to do this again in the right in the early spring and hopefully in the summer again. So we're looking to do 4 and try to land it back into the city. Kingsley, can you bring your students up from the BPT from Bridgeport?
Possibly.
Folks?
Yeah, possibly.
If you can bring your folks up there, you coming down for that day or what?
Got to check into it. You know, got a little one, so everything is planned around.
Are you playing around with a baby toy right now?
No, the baby is asleep.
The baby is sleeping, man. He got a new baby, so he's a new dad. Yeah. You're a neo dad, a neophyte dad. You're a new dad, but it's okay. It's okay to be a new dad. I'm a new dad too. I'm the father of curing violence right now. So so let's, we're getting close to the end of the show, and we just want to appreciate all of you for coming on. If you just joined us today on Urban Talk Radio, today we have as our guest Trisha Kelly. She's the CEO of Ebony Horse Women Incorporated in Hartford. We also have Dr. Rebecca Cohen, who is a New Haven resident, and she is a clinical psychologist. And what we're talking about is equestrian horse therapy. Did I say it right?
No.
Okay.
Equine assisted psychotherapy.
I used the words I knew.
Okay.
I used the words I knew how to say. I'm trying to say no big words and get all messed up. Be like, okay, you on radio show saying messed up words. Say the big using Jesse Jackson words. I'm trying to use the words I know. Horse feel better. No, it's what you said is what we're going to do for the community, and we want people to come out. This invitation is to everybody. What I love about Gulf Street Park, because it's that one park in the city of New Haven where you don't have to ask for permission to go. You just show up. You just show up at Gulf Street Park, and so we're hoping that folks are going to come out, be a part of this situation, and really embrace it. And we're going to be looking to do some really big things. I mean, what Dr. Cohen said, it is very disheartening that we live in a city, and we can almost call this the tales of two cities. Ms. Kelly lives in a city that allows horses, and we live in a city that does not allow horses. And yet, both of our cities seem to be running neck and neck for homicide. And most of those homicides are Black men and then Hispanic and Latino men. Young boys and young men who we have to wonder if we would have made a better investment in their environment, we would have been able to get a better handle on them trying to find out, focus on their future. So certainly there's something that needs to be happening between Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, Waterbury, Naugatuck. I call them the metros because these are New England cities, and they do operate under the same system. Even though each mayor tries to be very unique and act like they're doing something that's truly out of the box, until they break the system that really operates on how the resources flow into those communities, nothing hasn't changed. That's why we already know that there's going to be a race between homicides between 3 cities: Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven. Why do we know that every year? Why do we know that every year? And each time you might have a different mayor and different city council people, but why do we know that those homicide rates are going to be like that every year? Because we haven't done much to really purge that system and break that. So I'm hoping that when this program comes and lands in New Haven, that it really becomes like a meteor of change, around how we deal with trauma. And we find us some property. We're going to find us some property here for these them horses. Okay, for these them horses. And if we work really hard, I'm confident. We already know there's 11 acres behind the old police academy, so we're looking at that, and we just need to kind of connect with some of the community people on the Newhallville side and on the other side. So we know that there's property, and then maybe we need to sit down and talk to our alders and find out, can we have horses in our backyard? I'm just saying. I got a question. Ms. Kelly.
Yes.
How much room does a horse need in your backyard? Like, how much? What does Hartford have a square footage rule? Like,
no, and that's really odd because I own a house in Hartford, and I live in an adjoining town that stipulates acreage that you have to have for a horse, but Hartford doesn't, which is crazy.
Why?
But the old laws are still on the books.
That's scary.
As Hartford being an agriculture, so there is no stipulation. But what was helpful to me when I did live right in the heart of Hartford, in the hood, as it said, is that I lived across the street from Kingsley Park, 693 acres. So I could take my horse right across the street and just ride forever. So that was very helpful. But no, Hartford doesn't have a stipulation, but a lot of the surrounding towns do.
Well, you kind of got me scared a little bit, man, when you said they still got a lot of old laws on the books.
These are old agricultural laws.
Yeah, they got some old laws on the books. Yeah, they do have they got some old writings on some of them buildings too. If you read them tight. So yeah, we got some work to do, but y'all are doing the work, and I really appreciate.
So Shafiq, before you sign off, I guess the question will be, how well does equine-assisted psychotherapy work?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
we're not signed off yet. You being that person right now. You being the third show host.
Let me kind of explain the
process.
Yes. So the horse is a prey animal. A lot of people do animal-assisted therapy. They use dogs for that.
Yeah.
The difference with that is that it's predator to predator. Humans are predators. Dogs are predators. Dogs are looking for alpha. They're looking for someone to lead them. So that's why you could just do anything you want to do to a dog. He'll love you at the end of the day because he's looking for alpha. Horses are prey animals, which means that we're predators and they're prey. So that they know that we hunt prey animals. So they're always suspicious of us. They do not have the luxury of language. They don't understand what we are saying. But what they do have is a mechanism to measure our energy. So 80% of all communication is nonverbal. That's in humans.
Yes.
80%. Those horses can tell when we are in trauma, when we have a high anxiety, when we're depressed, when we're angry. They have the ability to measure our energy. So let me give you a perfect example. I can put you on a horse, Shafiq, and have you to tell me 2 stories, one true, one not true. That horse will be able to tell me which story is untrue. How do you think he does that?
He goes.
But now,
that's not it.
So let me tell you how it's done. It's done the same way a lie detector test is done. So we have pulses throughout our body. You're sitting on that horse. He can feel every heartbeat of your heart. When you lie, your heartbeat goes up. When that heartbeat changes, he gets suspicious that something is wrong. He makes a move. The therapist who understands equine psychology and behavior understands that horse just made a move on that story you told. That way she or he knows that that particular story is a lie. So the horse has that ability to see beyond words. And it's a diagnostic tool for the therapist. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that this is a huge warm-blooded species. And a lot of people, particularly guys, they can relate because it's this macho piece to it. This is a big animal. I'm a big guy. I dig this. All right. But that animal is now non-judgmental. He doesn't care about your color, your race, your economic status. He just understands, are you authentic? Are you authentic? And as long as you are authentic around him, you two can do business together. He understands when you're not authentic. And that's when he tells the therapist, this too much going on. And so don't get fooled by, I'm fine, I'm doing well, everything is okay. The horse is like he's lying. It's not. But it also helps to release some of that tension and anxiety when you're brushing this horse, when you're walking this horse. I can't tell you how many times I have heard clients say things to the horse that they would never say to the therapist or anybody else. And that's the beginning of healing. You have to be able to get it out.
Yeah.
All of this stuff that is packed down in you, and you don't even know the root of it. You think you're mad because somebody got in your face. It doesn't even have to be that. It has to be, it could be something a lot deeper that you have packed down so far, you have forgotten how to reach down there and get it. That horse helps you to get down and get down to the root and pull it up. And once you begin to pull up that stuff, you're on the healing process then. And that horse is there to help you maneuver through it. It's an amazing process.
Wow,
And we have had success stories after success story. Kids who have tried to kill themselves graduating from Cornell University. Kids have gone on to Harvard, Howard, Browns, name it. All of these fabulous schools created their own businesses, making a lot of money today, all because of a horse who reached down and grabbed that trauma and brought it out. So we're not saying that we are going to be able to replace other modalities. We're not saying that. We're saying we're an addition to, and it works particularly with our people because in talk therapy, you know as well as I do, what happens in the family stays in the family. You don't start talking about it outside the house, okay? You don't have to.
That's for sure.
With equine therapy, you don't have to talk.
Right.
Because that horse is going to tell that therapist everything.
Listen, I'm loving it. I'm just sitting here like, see a part 2, you know, on the next episode of horse therapy. We should do a series episode, but definitely, listen, I'm behind this thing 1,000%. I've been around a lot of stuff.
So let me add this. We want the clinicians to come out. We're going to do a demonstration. We're going to do a demonstration on how this works.
This October the 10th.
October the 10th. We need the clinicians to come out so that we could explain to them how it works. We could certify them in equine assisted psychotherapy. They could use this as an extra modality in their practice.
Yes.
You know,
and can you certify them that day, Miss Kelly, or
no, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
We can't do it that day because the process is it's a longer process.
Okay.
So that we have to teach them equine psychology.
Yes. Okay. And to the city of New Haven, they can provide this probably too for the client, but they need some property for them horses. Maybe we can work out a relationship. If we get some property, and then they could do a certification, and we can start working on some trauma for the community, and then hopefully, at least for New Haven, we could be one of those cities that each year we'd be like, man, we don't have gun violence issues. We're focusing on trauma. It's like national. It's our trauma day, you know, a trauma week where we just, you know, maybe bring a horse back. So Harry's hitting me with, gotta go. We're getting close to our time. Go ahead, Kingsley.
Before we sign off, I would like to wish my condolences to the Pickens family. A man that I got to know from my first time I went to Sag Harbor. I knew his son in the music industry, working with Bad Boy for a very long time. Mr. William Pickens, you may want to get to know this man and his family, who are historians. His father is William Pickens. He's William Pickens III. The grandfather was born in 1881 to slave. Let me see. Harry, I can't share anymore. Can you make this share? Can you enable me to share, please? His grandfather was born in 1881 to slave parents. After he was freed, he went on to be a straight A student at Yale and graduated in 1904. In 1975, he created the Pickens Prize, a cash prize award to senior essayists from the Department of African American Studies in 2002. His grandfather was also the co-founder of NAACP, at 28 years old. His family was highly engaged in American politics and racial justice activism. He passed on his birthday on September 27th. And you want to get to know this man, and I would like to feature his family to come in here and share some more stories about this great man. So Patricia and Rebecca, I'm going to put his information in the chat room. You may want to Google him. His name is William Pickens III. Like I said, I had opportunity to call him Uncle Bill. And whenever I went to Sag Harbor, he shared, I gave him all my ears because he was a man of wisdom that loved to share, stories. When he found out that I was doing Connecticut Against Violence, he gave me his blessings, and I did get an opportunity to interview him. He was a feature on one of our youth summit collaboration with the workplace. So I will share that video somewhere down the line. So I would like to wish him rest in peace and my condolences to his entire family. Again, his name is William Pickens III. Right. Thank you very much.
Right. So if you're just joining us today on Urban Talk Radio, I am Shafiq Abdussabur. I'm a co-host, Kingsley Ossei. And if you're just tuning in to our show today, we were talking about equestrian horse trauma. Did I say it right? Equestrian horse trauma. And our guest,
equine assisted therapy.
Equine assistance therapy. And our guest today with us, Dr. Rebecca Cohen. She's a clinical psychologist, as well as Patricia Kelly, who is the executive director of Ebony Horsewomen in Hartford, Connecticut. They are talking about a program that they are bringing to Gulf Street Park on the 10th of October this year, 11 a.m. to 3. Bring your children, bring your family. We're asking for therapists to come and service providers and just the whole community come out and see this wonderful, this wonderful program that they're introducing to New Haven that we hope to be something that's reoccurring. So again, thank you for tuning in for Urban Talk Radio. Remember, Urban Talk Radio airs every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on WNHH 103.5 FM and NewHavenIndependent.org. So thank you all for joining us. God bless.